the night.
I'm about to go get some banh mi sandwich and char-grilled pork and rice and some drinks for me and Sean. I'm actually solo right now. Sean is out getting his saxophone repaired. I stayed back at his house for today just because I had some personal meetings to attend to. So yeah, let's go get some food. Woo! Don't mind me, Sean. I'm gonna take a little sip of your Vietnamese coffee, iced. Oh, that is, wow, this is it. This is some elixir stuff right here. Yum.
Yes, appearing now.
Cheers. We're eating a delicious Vietnamese meal recommended by Sean. Oh my god, you meant eating. Sorry.
I'm still eating and she's time. No. This place has been like near my neighborhood for so long. Viva Pomona? Not Viva Pomona, what's it called? Favina.
Oh, is it like Kavina but Favina?
That's what I thought, but it's in Pomona. It doesn't make any sense.
Oh, so you're starting with the egg rolls?
No.
I want some too. Oh, wait, I have some already.
Get out of here.
Speaking of food, though, don't you love the food that's shown in Studio Ghibli?
A little bit in Totoro, that breakfast. That was good.
In one of our previous videos, I made a kind of obscure reference to Spiritedaway, where it was a video of us cooking. This reminds me of a scene from Spiritedaway, but Sean hasn't watched it yet, so let's make Sean watch that. And funny enough, it got a lot of traction.
Yeah, enough of y'all bullied me into watching the classic. So, considering it was one of Erika's childhood favorites, I had the honor of watching it twice.
That movie came out in Japan in 2000, and then it came out in the US through Walt Disney Distributions in 2001. But of course, I watched it in Japanese first, having grown up in a Japanese household. When I watched it the first time, I was in 2nd grade, and I'm a scaredy cat, and I get scared of things very easily, so just picture a tiny Erika in 2nd grade, just clinging on to her mom's shirt, like when Chihiro's clinging on to her mom as they're crossing the tunnel. Yubaba creeped me out. The door to her entrance creeped me out.
She creeped me out.
Yeah, and I think the first time I watched it, and actually, I cry every time Chihiro's like crying as she's eating her onigiri that Haku feeds her after they go see Chihiro's parents that turned into pigs at the pig pen. And Haku is so handsome.
I never understand the being attracted to 2D characters. Maybe you guys can educate me on this, but I never had that. Then again, I started watching Star Wars pretty early, so I had 3D crushes.
Yeah, you crushed on Padme.
Oh yeah, Padme, Obi-Wan. Who doesn't have a crush on Obi-Wan?
Not me.
She doesn't count.
So yeah, what were your first impressions? First impression Japanese, first impression English.
The first time, there's just like an air of purity to Studio Ghibli films, I think it's like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like, I'm sure that this is kind of just kind of like watching things outside of American tropes, but I can see the appeal. Like watching that kind of stuff as a kid, there's a lot of cliches that obviously I felt like I was missing growing up watching American kids movies. And I don't even want to say that. I don't want to say feel like I was missing it, because you kind of realize a lot of that stuff wasn't like super necessary. You know, the stuff in American movies, like certain tropes, you know, like adult kind of like romances that kind of happen in the middle of like these kids movies that are like, where did they come from? The fact that it was like very genuine watching that, and that it felt almost more like a brother-sister relationship kind of in like between Haku and Chihiro. You know, I mean, I could be misinterpreting that, but that's how I got it. It didn't feel like a forced or rushed cliche. It just felt kind, you know. It's like they took time to kind of really capture nature and then human nature in its core, for better or for worse, which I thought was pretty cool, and the effects of human nature upon Mother Nature.
So I like what you say about the way that they depict love and the way that they depict nature and then humans and how humans interact with nature, or the effects of how humans present themselves upon nature.
Yeah, I wouldn't even consider it interaction. I'd consider it like imposing themselves
Right.
on nature and spiritual endeavors.
It's almost like a sense of entitlement, you know, kind of like leaving behind a bicycle or your trash in the river and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? When I first watch a movie, a lot of the time the story might not sit in with me immediately, but kind of like, just like kind of socioeconomic, political, or spiritual cues are kind of like the first things that I start to understand, and then the music. So it was nice kind of getting a grasp of that, very much so from the get-go, especially seeing that coming from another culture, you know, and seeing it without American tropes, which I'm so used to. So that was kind of what I noticed.
Yeah, I feel like American tropes. I remember as a young kid raised here, even though I'm Japanese, I remember thinking like, oh my god, are Haku and Chihiro gonna bay up? But as I've rewatched the films over the years, I realized their love was built on looking out for each other and protecting each other and helping each other out without expecting anything in return. There's like the sense of reciprocity that has really stuck with me in the recent watches. Yeah, I've been reading this book called Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, this mixed indigenous woman in the US who's also a botanist and a scientist, but is also super deeply practicing in indigenous knowledge and science. One of the core themes of that book is literally about reciprocity.
Cool.
And exchanging with people or exchanging with the maple tree, passing on that gift directly to others in a way that would benefit the ecosystem.
Yeah.
So that's what it makes me kind of think about as I'm reading this book and then watching this movie, because a lot of Hayao Miyazaki's movies, especially Spiritedaway, is so rooted in Shintoism, which is indigenous to Japan. And Shintoism is about believing that there are spirit forces that exist in all aspects of nature. So like there's like living spirits in the grass or the trees.
And our napkins flying away.
Our napkins, yeah, possibly, you know, like the wind. Whoosh.
So is it just like forces of nature, or is it things that are created by man?
It's things by nature, not by man.
Okay, that
Yeah.
makes more sense.
Yeah.
I was gonna
And
say,
I think you recall in Totoro as well. And there was like actually like a very small frame of this in Spirited Away where there was the Tori gate.
Yeah.
And the gate, and then there was like a rope tied around the tree.
Yeah.
That usually kind of symbolizes like a deity, like a spirit that kind of guards that area.
Sure.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Fair.
Yeah, so in Totoro, you know, you see like the dad and his daughters kind of like bowing their heads to the gate and the tree and like paying their respects. But then in Spirited Away, Chihiro, well, her parents are like, let's just go check this out.
Yeah.
Oh, look, food. And just like really just like taking without even asking for permission,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, that starts to make more sense.
How familiar were you about this movie before watching it, and how familiar were you with Japanese culture before watching it?
Not really at all. I mean, I like, I really, really, really love Eastern food, and that's about the extent to which I understood. I don't even want to use the word understand because it wasn't understanding. It's more just enjoying the fruits of the culture. Call me a leech.
I mean, I don't consider you a leech because you're always acknowledging where the source of the food is from,
Sure.
or whatever cuisine you cook.
Sure, I do really respect that. That could just be the lack of representation and respect that kind of happens as a result of general ignorance and just taking, you know. I think acknowledgement is really kind of one of the few steps, the easiest steps that we can take. But yeah, as far as like the film and even the music, not really much at all, to be completely honest.
Yeah, I was surprised to find out that you weren't familiar with Hisaishi Joe, considering your knowledge of music, whether it's in the U.S. or abroad.
Sure.
But I'm happy to expose it to you because it's fire.
Fire.
And you actually made some pretty keen observations about kind of like the music used in Totoro and then the music used in Spirited Away.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'm always really curious to see, because, you know, we live in a world that's largely influenced by European music, not to say that it isn't a powerful influence in the sense that its architectural design is very intense and obviously has made its way into the entirety of our world. But it's really cool to kind of hear how much of an influence that, and Americans have done this too, but I really, really, really love it and hear it in the way that Japanese culture utilizes European classical music. It's like it's using the same kind of harmonic structures, but never really releasing the hominess and the folkiness of like a Japanese melody. And sure, I could go into like the depths of what I think the sounds are.
Maybe for another video.
Yeah, someday. maybe we'll play some stuff for you.
Ooh, let us know if you're into that.
That'd be cool. No, I think my favorite part about Hisaishi Joe and Ryuichi Sakamoto, who's another great Japanese composer, I think they really kind of hang on to the strength of Japanese melody, and it has such a folky influence that sticks with me. It's like so incredibly soothing and tranquil, but most importantly singable. Upon watching Totoro and Spirited Away, the music, what was interesting was that whenever a main theme was addressed, it was like a song, which is interesting because I'm a huge fan of John Williams, and John Williams, you know, he obviously can put a melody across the meaning of it, and it's fantastic, but a lot of this stuff operates more like a cue or a symphony, you know, and he's really great at doing that. But it's interesting to see how Hisaishi Joe's music, when he would compose the main themes, it would be the theme. It would be a song. And I was talking to my friend Dan about this morning, actually, and how a lot of the melodies and the chord progressions, it's like a jazz standard. It has like chord changes. You know, it's not just like some interwoven orchestral being. It's a song, and I think that's pretty powerful. That's pretty unique. I think maybe it's just unique to Hisaishi Joe's, but actually I don't think so, because even upon watching like Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, and hearing Sakamoto's influence musically, that's kind of what I've noticed. So that's kind of what I've noticed about the music and everything. So.
Dang, that's such a sharp observation.
Stuff's cool.
Yeah, because I mean, having spent time with you, I feel like you usually notice you have a much more insightful observation with music than I do, given your background in music education and stuff. So I think it's really cool to hear what you hear, which I don't hear, because it's like I grew up with this music, and it's just like so commonplace for me to hear like this, like what you would consider like folksy Japanese music, because I'm like, oh, it's like Japanese, whatever. But no, this is super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I should notice, when I say folksy, I know that can get kind of dark, but I really mean that as respect, because it means like there's a sound that sounds like Japanese culture. It's not like nationalist either. It's just a beautiful part of the music. You know? So.
Yeah, I would like to think that Japanese people are in tune with nature. But then if you go to places like Tokyo, like Shibuya or Enoshima, where there's a lot of trash, maybe that's not the case. And I think that might be the commentary that Miyazaki-san is making.
Sure.
I love that you brought up the music, or we're talking about the music too, because I think in my recent rewatches and having spent time with this guy, and especially watching Star Wars for the first time with him, he's super like, oh, did you hear that leitmotif? Oh, did you hear that? Oh, did you hear that? And I'm like, what? Huh? Like, because I'm so focused on the story. So with him, I'm like, oh, leitmotif. Oh, they have a theme. Oh, there's a theme that's taking place when this action's happening. So with that said, I noticed on my last two rewatches that the song Ano Natsu no Hi, or One Summer's Day, is playing. It plays whenever Chihiro is helping out Haku, or vice versa. Because you first hear it Because you hear it when Chihiro is eating the onigiri and she's like crying, and Haku's just like comforting her, and he has her old clothes from the human world and the name card. And then you hear that One Summer's Day melody again when Haku is in the dragon form and he has Zeniba's stamp inside him. So when they get into Kamaji's workroom, I think that's when you hear it again, because she's like, Haku, eat this mud, you know? So I thought it was really cool to hear One Summer's Day as kind of like a leitmotif, looking out for each other and love.
Yeah.
Thanks to your musical education, uphoning. That's not even a word, but uphoning, new word. I keep talking about the scene where Chihiro is eating her onigiri and crying these huge tears.
They were pretty massive,
So
actually.
big. And then Haku's comforting her, they're there. That scene really sticks out to me because as I've grown up with this movie, I realized that this movie, a lot of it also has to do with remembrance and doing whatever it takes to preserve who you are at your essence and what you've grown up with.
Sure.
Or what you identify as. Because, spoilers, in order to work in the bathhouse in the spirit world, they take away your name from the human world and give you a new name. So they try to like strip away your identity. Since Haku had endured that situation of coming from human world to spirit world and giving up his human name, he forgot who he was back when he was a human, although I think he was a spirit, like a river spirit. Digression. He was a river spirit in the human world, or at least like a river embodiment.
Sure.
Because at the very end, Chihiro tells him, oh yeah, like there used to be a river, but now there's apartments built on it.
Sure.
Which so speaks to the building of like homes in Japan, in like just clearing out the paddy fields and all this like natural stuff. Because I've seen it in my grandparents' super inaka or country area, where there's like my grandma's house and then this like plot of land, and then there's like all these rice paddy fields surrounding the area. And the last few times that I visited her out in the inaka, now in this plot of land that was pretty much her yard, there's just like a new home built. So it just feels like more a little densely crowded, even though we're in this spacious countryside area. So I thought it was really interesting that there was that bit of dialogue where Chihiro's like, oh, there used to be a river where you were, but now there's apartments. That really stuck out in my last rewatch.
I was always super curious about how, like, because, okay, like, the closest thing to Japanese, and it's not even close to it, but really the closest thing to watching something with Japanese influence that I watched as a kid was probably Avatar: The Last Airbender. Please correct me if it's Japanese or not of influence. I don't really know. But I do know that one thing I was always kind of curious about and never really figured out was how the spirit world worked in relation to our world, the human world, you know, and seeing those relationships and seeing the overlap was always something that I was like super curious about, and it was kind of interesting to see that in another genre. a different show.
Right,
film.
right. You know, come to think of it, I've never watched Avatar, but I've heard unanimously rave reviews about it. So I feel like it's time to watch it. From what I can see with Avatar, I think there's a lot more like Chinese, Tibetan, Mongolian influence.
Sure.
I can't speak on it because I've never seen the show and I've never read up on the Wikipedia. But that's my guess. Because I mean, a lot of Japanese culture, even like the traditional ones, are essentially borrowed from Chinese culture.
Sure.
What was your favorite scene?
Sure.
Go ahead. Oh, I caught you mid-eating again.
It's alright. I just kind of shoveled it in my mouth. There was a couple. One in particular, and there's different influences for different reasons. But I liked there was. This is gonna sound really, really kind of weird, but for some reason, in the bathhouse when the stink spirit.
Yes, the stink spirit.
When he or she, not really sure.
It?
When it came into.
But Yubaba and Chihiro, at least in the English version, they refer to him as he.
Sure.
But you
Yeah.
can call it whatever.
Yeah. When the stink spirit came into the room, and when Chihiro had the herbal bath, when for some reason when she was going through the process of cleaning the stink spirit and then pulled out all of the junk, all of that release, that probably stuck with me the most. Because it's like, personally for me, I know that I'll carry a lot of things with me for a long time until I finally just like onto a bathhouse, you know?
Right.
But
Yeah.
but that's kind of, I think that was like, you know, it's kind of like the popping a zit kind of thing, that it's like kind of you're like free at last kind of thing, you know. So that was probably the scene that got to me.
Dang. But I'm so happy you brought up about the stink spirit at the bathhouse, because that also takes me to talking about, or wanting to share about how much baths mean to me, because I love taking baths. And even when we went to Big Bear, it was just a non-negotiable to get an outdoor hot tub, because I personally just wanted to have a similar experience to the outdoor baths that I've experienced in Japan, which were so like natural and spiritually, it just felt so abundant
Yeah.
in receiving all this beauty and relaxation and restoration.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you ever go to Japan, I mean, when you ever go to Japan, I highly recommend going to the bathhouses, especially when they're outdoors, because it really is a place just to cleanse away whatever gunk and whatever heaviness that you might be carrying, and then coming out of the bathhouse a little lighter.
Yeah, I'm into that.
Yeah.
How about you then? Do you have a scene?
Do I have a scene that I really like from the last few rewatches?
Well, just in general. Yeah.
Just in general. Oh, good question. I think my favorite scene, which is probably everyone's favorite scene, is definitely when Chihiro's riding Haku in dragon form. Because, I mean, I still kind of understood this as a kid too, recognizing, like, I remember your name. And, oh my god, the Japanese version is like, あなたの名前は琥珀川, and it's just like so melodic and pretty sounding, but then the English version's like, your name is Kohaku River. And I was like, oh, this is so anticlimactic. I felt like that essence of like the river spirit was just like lost in translation in the English dub. Nonetheless, that scene is just so stunning, and having become more conscious of sound design in films, having dated him, I love the sound of whenever Haku kind of mingles with his dragon element. Because even in the first act, when Haku's like to the castle, I mean, the spirit house, you see a little bit of the shells of his dragonness come out of his breath.
That was cool.
And when it comes out, you can hear kind of like ding 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 ding, kind of like glass
Yeah.
falling on the floor, but not like. It was like. Kada, 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 kada.
Yeah.
I thought that sound effect was hella cool, and you hear it again when Chihiro says out loud his name back in the human world, and then Haku's eyes are like, oh, and then you hear the scales shed away, not music scale. I'm sorry.
No, I know what you mean.
The skin shedding away. It's like, and I thought that sound design was gorgeous.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's tight.
Yeah.
What's up?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm enjoying checking out Studio Ghibli again. At 23, this is kind of a introduction for me, kind of into a whole new world, which I'm really into. Cue Aladdin. No, I plan on continuing. I want to watch Princess Mononoke. I know it's gonna be sick. And you know, plenty of people have been recommending that to me, including this one. So as we continue, maybe we'll talk more about that, and maybe we'll also learn some of that music. I know I have a bunch of friends that, as soon as I said that I had watched Spirited Away, everybody was like, "Bro, we gotta play the music." So I'm thinking that that's gonna have to be a thing in the future. So. Yeah.
Yeah, let us know if you want to hear more kind of like our takes on these movies or like our first impressions of these movies. I have a lot of fun talking about this with Sean because I feel like my music worlds and film worlds are starting to make more sense and becoming more colorful. And I feel like you help make it colorful with me. And if you want music covers from these movies, do let us know.
Yeah. Definitely. Until next time, I'm Sean.
And I'm Erika. Peace.
You make a snap sound. Wow. Can you not snap? Snap. Then why'd you... What was that?
Let me live.
What was that? Why'd you fake snap?